Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, we are honored to have Christian Menefee, who is the Harris County, Texas attorney. Christian, how you doing today?
I'm great. Very grateful to be on. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, look, right now, Texas is under duress. Before we go any further, why don't you tell me a little bit about what the attorney for any county does here in Texas?
My position is the chief civil lawyer for the largest local government in the state of Texas. It's a team of about 250 folks who work day in and day out to provide legal advice to all of the county elected officials, more than 60 of them department heads, and to represent the more than 18,000 county employees. But most importantly, as the lawyer for the county, whenever there is a fight to be had in the courtroom between Harris County and the state of Texas, we stand in as legal counsel for Harris County. And so that's the part of the role that I'm most excited about. And it's also the part that's most necessary given what's going on right now in the current state of politics in Texas.
As it turns out, I think big cities and specifically Harris County feel under attack from Austin because we have bills that are being written that are not written specifically for Texas, but instead geographically for large areas concentrated like Harris County. Why don't you explain to us what exactly is happening in Austin and what are they trying to do?
Well, this all started long ago when the former Speaker of the House was recorded saying that he wanted the next legislative session to be the worst in the history of the state of Texas for cities and counties. And then you had during COVID, when we ran an election out in Harris County, you had multiple statewide elected officials targeting Harris County in their public statements in the courtroom, trying to run back some of the voter access measures that were initiated here in Harris County. And now we've seen this legislative cycle, you've seen all kinds of bills aimed at overtaking local control out in Harris County. There's a bill that would prohibit Harris County government from passing any type of regulation that conflicts with state laws. So think worker safety protections. There's a bill that would allow Harris County's locally elected prosecutor to have a more expedited process to be removed from office if she were to prosecute crimes related, if she were to have a policy of not prosecuting crimes related to abortion. But there's also election laws that are specifically aimed at Harris County. One law in particular, if passed, would abolish the elections administrator office in Harris County. I think this is a very intentional and deliberate effort by elected officials out in Austin to try to strip power from folks who were elected here locally in Harris County because they live differently than them, because they think differently than them, and because we all know that to flip the state of Texas, that road is going to go through counties like Harris County, like Bexar County, like Dallas County. And so right now, Harris County is being targeted to really strengthen the Republican dominance in this state.
Now, my question is, they're attempting this, but is this legal? Now that certain sections of the Voter Rights Act have been decimated, are these things that they're doing legal, or is there still recourse that you as the attorney for the county and others who are being affected can actually try to mitigate in the federal courts?
Challenging these laws would for sure be an uphill battle because here in the state of Texas, our Constitution is pretty clear that counties are merely a local arm of the state. And so the state, through its legislature, is allowed to really regulate those entities as they see fit. And so there's a very limited number of instances where a county can actually challenge the state of Texas. And since I've been in office, we fought hard to utilize every single one of those. If some of these laws were to pass, particularly the laws that are limited to a county with a population, for example, of 2.7 million or greater, which only includes Harris County, we'll consider a few different avenues. One is filing a lawsuit in the state courts in the state of Texas because there is a constitutional ban in the Texas Constitution on local laws, right? The idea being that legislators shouldn't be using their position to enact personal vendettas against particular local governments, but instead should be doing what's in the best interest of the entire state. And so that's one avenue we'll look at. We'll also look at federal protections under the United States Constitution, as well as the Voting Rights Act. But those lawsuits can't be brought by the county. They have to be brought by individuals. And so that's where we consider partnering with your legal advocacy groups in the United States Department of Justice. We'll make sure to use every single tool in our toolbox to fight these in court if possible. But I really want to level set with everybody. The state of Texas has broad authority to limit the actions of its counties, of its cities, and they will utilize that at every single turn. And so that's why it's important that nationally people know what's going on in Texas. because the will of the voters in Harris County, the will of the voters in San Antonio, the will of the voters in Austin should be respected. And we shouldn't allow folks out in Austin to try to pass laws that supplant our local officials and that silence the voices of the people who elected them in the office.
Now I understand that legally speaking, there's not much that probably is going to be able to be done. But my biggest concern with what's occurring in Austin right now, is I don't see the passion here in Houston. I mean, it was great seeing you I saw you on MSNBC earlier today, urging on that something needs to be done. But I don't see from many of our elected officials that are there representing in Austin right now that fire in the belly to come to Houston and say, even though legally speaking, these guys may be able to do this, that we have to maybe get on the streets to let folks know that it's not just going to be, we're not just not going to sit back and take what they're going to give. What's your thought on that?
I think that our state representatives and state senators are trying to be thoughtful about the approach because we're still early in the process. There are several different bills that are out there. Some are just completely troublesome and are going to be incredibly harmful to people of Harris County, right? So, for example, there's a bill out there that would allow the Secretary of State, who is appointed directly by the governor, to overturn election results, right? There's a bill out there that would abolish the Elections Administration Office in Harris County. There's a bill out there that would end countywide polling across the state. But these are still just bills. They haven't made it to the final step in the process. And I think what you're seeing from some of our legislators is wisely, they're trying to ensure that we don't inflame the Republicans and end up passing some of these bad bills. I think there's still a chance that due to some of the great work of our elected officials out in Austin, there's still a chance that the final bill that comes out is going to be something that's incredibly watered down, that doesn't do too much harm to our democratic processes here in Harris County. But I think the concern is, frankly, folks don't want to inflame Republicans and have them go target the worst of the bills and pass them out. As we get further down the process, so maybe in a couple of weeks, in a few weeks, if some of those terrible bills look like they're going to pass, I am more than confident that you're going to see elected officials from the state level to the local level making sure that their voices are heard, that people in the streets doing what is necessary to prevent those bad bills from passing.
Well, I hope you're right in that regards, because that has been my biggest concern, in that there's not been enough attention paid. What would in closing, what would your advice be to the activists in Houston right now, just waiting for, basically waiting for direction before they go ahead, and many wanting to take things into their own hands?
I mean, look, I think there's an important role in our society for activism. And so I think activists, the best thing that they can always do is to be activists, is to make sure that people's voices are heard, is to make sure that the message is getting to every single elected official that needs to hear it, and to make sure that they're keeping the proper pressure on elected officials to get in there to fight and to do the right thing. I would also encourage folks to communicate with your Harris County delegation. They know the issues that are important to us, but it's important to remind them because I know that each and every one of those folks is thinking very hard about what's the best way to approach these issues and how do we ensure that these laws do not pass. I've had conversation after conversation with the folks in the Harris County delegation, with the folks who serve on the elections committee, and I will tell you that these folks are committed to fighting these things tooth and nail so that they don't pass. It's always darkest before dawn, so we don't know which one of these bills is going to pass, but I will tell you, these folks are working behind the scenes to ensure that we're not going to end up with a bill that kills countywide voting in Harris County. We're not going to end up with a bill that allows the overturning of elections. We're not going to end up with a bill that takes the power of running elections from local governments and puts it in the hands of the Secretary of State's office. So I'm optimistic that folks are going to keep fighting, but it's important to make sure that you're communicating with our representatives so that they know our position.
Christian Menefee, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you very much for having me on.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.